Good morning and welcome back to Portugal. The Circuito de Estoril plays host to round one of the FIM CEV Repsol Championship and as a result, the European Moto2 Championship. With the top two riders in 2019 making their way up to the Moto2 World Championship, there's everything to play for in 2020. Not only a championship, but potentially World Championship rides at stake as well. 4.1 kilometres. It's a Circuito de Estoril, 4 lefts, 9 rights and 18 laps for the Moto2 guys to overcome in this opening race of the year. It's Jack Appleyard here alongside Lewis Sotheby once again as the intermediate class roar into life after an absence of over 200 days. And as we said, Lewis, with Edgar Pons and Hector Garza both moving up to the World Championship, it's pretty hard to pick a man that you would put the tag as favourite on for this 2020 European Moto2 series.
Yeah, it's very, very open. No former champions in this class anymore. Of course, Edgar Pons was a previous champion last year when he went and won it again in 2019. As you mentioned, he's now in World Championship action. He'll be getting his season back underway in a couple of weeks' time.
This is what went down in 2019, then starting under the reign of Estoril, and it was a disastrous start to the year for Jari Montoya. That man will start from pole position in race 2. Should have started from race 1 as well. We'll come to that in a minute, but his crash, with only a handful of laps remaining, meant that he threw away a potential debut win. As we went through the season, he was pretty much dominant from the 57 of Edgar Pons, was off pole position on just 2 occasions, was pretty much unbeatable throughout the year, with Hector Garza the only man to eventually be able to get the better of him in dry conditions. The other wet race took place at Aragon, with Hector Garza taking that one ahead of another man that's made his way through into the World Championship this year in Casper Daniel. But as soon as the clouds dissipated and the sun started to shine, it was once again Edgar Pons on top. Took his second European Moto2 Championship and as a result found his way into the World Championship as part of the Gresini squad. A couple of guys remain with us this year that were there in 2020, the likes of Nicky Tully, Alessandro Zacconi and Jari Montoya as well. Plus, we've got a couple of guys that have gone in the other direction, making their way back down to the European Moto2 class from the World Championship last year, with the likes of Lukas Tulovic and Xavi Cardaluz trying to ignite their Moto2 careers once more with victory in this championship. Conditions haven't changed. The sun is still shining, 28 degrees air temperature, 40 degrees track temperature. It is absolutely perfect here in Portugal. And we start with that man right there, Jari Montoya, the Italian, will start race 1 from 7th on the grid despite being fastest in qualifying yesterday. The Italian ended up 0.3 of a second clear of Nicky Tully. However, in qualifying 1, of course, just like the European Talent Cup, they had 2 sessions. He was adjudged to have been slow in 5 sectors across the session, dawdling on the racing line, and as a result was handed a 6th place grid penalty. So for race 1, instead of pole position, he will start from 7th, and as a result, this man, the Finn Nicky Tully, moves from 2nd to pole position, and he will start a European Moto2 from the front of the grid for the first time in his career.
Yeah, first ever pole sitter in the Moto E World Cup last year, Nicky Tully. So he's looking to back that up now with the first victory of 2020 from pole position in the European Moto2 Championship. Hard work ahead of him, and the big question, I suppose, will be how long it takes Montoya to make his way through the field, because he and Tully have been the 2 riders to beat so far. Alessandro Zacconi then qualified 3rd, starts 2nd by virtue of the penalty to his compatriot. Now, he does have a victory. He's the highest ranked rider from last season back in the championship for 2020, so he'll be one of the riders expecting to compete for the title. And he does have a victory to his name, that one victory here at Estoril. He won race 2 here 1 year ago.
In slightly different conditions, I'll just throw in there, he has a couple of podium finishes in the sunshine as well at Albacete, 2nd there and 3rd in Jerez. But he's certainly a man to look out for. 3rd in last year's championship, as you rightly say. The highest ranked man from 2019 to continue in 2020. Here is Lukas Tulovic. He will start from the outside of the front row. The German jumping down from the World Championship. Spent 1 year in the World Championship last year with a best finish of 13 for Assen, but he does have history in the European Championship, the Moto2 series here, with podiums in 2018, pole positions in 2017. Still only 20 years of age. You do forget that he's still only a youngster, is Lukas Tulovic, despite having so much experience. He's hoping that a championship win this year will hopefully reignite his career and he'll find himself back in the World Championship in 2021. Another man that's made the move down from the World Championship to the European Championship is this man, Xavi Cardelus, as part of the Aspar squad in 2019. The Andorran, 22 years of age, unable to pick up a point last year in the World Championship. 32 Grand Prix to his name, has plenty of experience at that level, but now moves back down into the European Championship, a place he also has podium finishes to his name, with second places at Albacete coming in 2018.
Yeah, a new name to many viewers and a particularly difficult name to pronounce, but we'll give it a go. Piotr Bisikierski, the Pole who starts in 5th position on the 74. Now, here's a rider who I think has caught many by surprise this weekend, although it is his first full season in the CEV Moto2. He did race and did finish 7th in this class towards the end of 2018. It's amazing for the Pole. He didn't actually start riding a motorbike until age 13. And of course, we've got many riders who are younger than that who are already racing in the European Talent Cup. So a late bloomer, the Pole, but he's certainly making up for lost time now.
Yeah, still only 18 years of age as well, so only has 5 years of experience riding on a bike, and already is able to jump onto the second row of a European Moto2 grid. He's got plenty of talent, does the Pole. But talking of talent, for me, this is the performance of the day yesterday. Fermin Aldeguer, 3rd place in last year's European Talent Cup. Everybody thought he would make the way through to the Junior World Championship, but he hasn't. He's made his way through to European Moto2 Championship, but as part of the Super Stock 600 category. He becomes the first man on a Super Stock 600 bike to start a race from row 2 of the grid since Ivo Lopez, right here at Estoril 2 years ago. It's unheard of, pretty much, for a Super Stock 600 machine to be battling at the front, but Aldeguer put in a super lap yesterday to be able to find himself on row 2 of the grid.
Just 15 years of age, Aldeguer, and yeah, he was the big surprise to us when we looked at the qualifying timings yesterday to find himself so high up. No one was higher than this man, the would-be pole man, Jari Montoya, who, as we've already mentioned, has copped a 6th place grid penalty for slow sectors over the weekend. It's an offence the race direction do take very, very seriously, and Montoya has fallen foul of that, which means that he starts 7th for this race, but he will be on pole later on when we get to race 2.
Of course, Nicky Tully, as a result, will start from pole position. As we rightly said, this is his first race back since that horrible leg break at Misano during the Moto E World Cup. He's obviously had plenty of time to recover. That incident just under 12 months ago, so there shouldn't be any problems with fitness. Talking of the Moto E World Cup, there's another man that will be competing in the 2020 Championship that, of course, gets underway in just over a week's time at Jerez. Alejandro Medina, riding for the Aspar squad in Moto E, part of the Apex Cardoso racing concern here in the European Moto2 Championship. Starts from 8th on the grid on his return to this Moto2 series.
And it's easy to forget, he has raced already this year, albeit behind a console. He finished 4th in the MotoGP, or the Moto E virtual race of Misano.
Yeah, did a pretty good job, actually. If memory serves right, he was going to finish on the podium, but got T-boned by Mattia Cassidy on the final lap. Hopefully we don't see any of that happening in this race. The final place on the 3rd row of the grid goes to Adam Norridin. I'm sure a name that many people will be familiar with. Plenty of experience in the Moto3 and the Moto2 World Championship. Actually jumped up and pretty much did half of last year's Moto2 World Championship whilst replacing the injured Kyril Idampawi. Now we'll start a full year in the European Moto2 Championship, hoping to try and fight for the championship.
Looking now at Tega Harder, who completes the top 10 on the grid, starts at the front of the fourth row. This is his first full season in the CEV Moto2 class, although he has ridden a few appearances before. Had a best of 12th last year at Jerez when he appeared last year. He's already looking on course to better that this year. He looks like he's made a bit of progress with an extra bit of experience. Matteo Ratto in 11th, the Italian, another name to keep out for. He is on the number 13, age 15, another of the youngsters that's moved up this year. He has experience in the CEV Moto3, which is the Italian national championship, but this is his first time in this paddock.
Yeah, moves up from the Moto3 bikes to the Moto2. Just 15 years of age. Of course, you look at the front row, you've got Nicky Tully, who's 24. You've got Alessandro Zacconi, who's 21 years of age. You've got Lucas Tulovic, who's 20. There's a big age difference between those guys. He's one of the real youngsters. In fact, the youngest on the grid, tied with Firmin Aldeguer, who's also 15. So plenty of years in front of those guys will be valuable experience for them in the future. And we just caught a glimpse there of the final man on row 4 of the grid, another of the Japanese riders, the second of our Japanese competitors, Takeshi Ishizuka, back for another year in the European Moto2 Championship after fighting it out in 2019 as well, for the best finish of 11th for Albacete, a man that has passed at the Suzuka A-Tower, won the Stock 1000 Suzuka A-Tower in 2018. So here we go then, the starting grid for our first FIM CEV Repsol Moto2 European Championship race of 2020. It's Nicky Tully that starts on pole position ahead of Alessandro Zacconi and Lucas Tulovic. Row 2 of the grid, Xavi Cardeluz, Pieter Biasakowski and Firmin Aldeguer in the Stock 600 bike. Then row number 3 should have been poleman Jari Montoya, Alejandro Medina and Adam Norridin.
Tega Harder, Matteo Ratto and Takeshi Ishizuka on row 4. Alex Toledo in 13th, he's the second of the Stock 600 runners. Kevin August was a 600 runner, now in Moto2. And Sam Wolford on row 5, with Kyle Smith, Joan Diaz and Alessandro Zietti on row 6. And
our final 4 riders on the grid, Nicholas Chiba, Jake Archer, the Brit, Andreas Koffler and Leon August, who also received a 6th place grid penalty yesterday for being too slow, dawdling on the racing line in 5 sectors. So here we go then. Nicky Tully will start from pole position as a result of Jari Montoya's penalty. Montoya, the Italian, 0.3 of a second clear of anybody else yesterday. And of course, in our earlier race, the European Talent Cup race, David Alonso qualified half a second clear, was able to break clear and win the race with quite a bit of comfort, but it looks as though as a result of that penalty it's going to be anything but easy for the number 55, who, remember, is looking to banish the memories of 12 months ago when with just 3 laps to go, with an advantage of over 5 seconds, he threw it up the road and denied himself of a first ever European Moto2 race win, something that it hasn't been able to achieve since.
I think that's the big question going into this race, Jack, is how quickly Montoya can make his way through into second place, assuming, of course, that it's a big assumption that Tully is leading, because these two have definitely had the advantage on the other riders so far this weekend. Alessandro Zacconi was the only rider in qualifying, with the exception of Tully, he was within a second of the poleman Montoya. Poleman, of course, prior to his penalty. So Montoya's going to have to try and make his way through Zacconi, Tulovic, Cardeluz and Bisikirski, as well as Aldeguer on the Stock 600 bike, before he could do anything about Nicky Tully. And Tully's job, as his team will be telling him, no doubt, the team Styler Bike squad, will be to try and get as far up the road as possible before Montoya makes his way through the pack.
Nicky Tully, of course, is a race winner in this class previously. In fact, coincidentally, he was the man that took benefit of Jari Montoya's crash in the closing stages of last year's season opener. He went on to take the win there as well. As we mentioned, first race back since that leg break. It's been a long absence for all of these riders, but nobody more so than the Finn. Hasn't raced competitively since September in 2019. He unfortunately broke his leg during a Moto E race at the Misano World Circuit, Marco Simoncelli, but at long last he is back on the grid. We'll be fighting for the Moto E World Cup in 2020 as well, but all focus, all eyes at the moment for the cool, calm and collected Finn is the European Moto2 Championship. He was one of the only men that was able to take it to Edgar Pons last year. Can he go a couple better this year and finally wrap up the championship that has eluded him for a couple of years now? Or can that man, Lukas Tulovic, making the jump down from the World Championship, reignite his career, find himself back on the world scene in 2021 and start life with victory here? The green flag waves. The European Moto2 Championship in 2020 is go, and it's a good start from Tuli, but it's a better start for the man to the right of him, Alessandro Zacconi. The Italian got a great drive from second on the grid, and he's going to take the whole shot into turn one surely. Here comes Peter Biesakowski on the second row. He moves through into second. What a super start from the pole. Meanwhile, who's that that's gone?
Montoya going straight on. He didn't get a great start at all, Jack, and then he really got it unsettled under braking for turn one. We were right around the outside, so any hope of Montoya making any progress has gone straight out the window.
Well, it was going to be a tough job starting from seventh place. He's just made it even harder now. He looks to be outside of the top 10, does the man that should have started from pole position. Meanwhile, Nicky Tuli, the man that did start from pole position, despite going a little bit backwards off the line, has got ahead of his teammate Biesakowski and is up there to third place behind the big number 3 of Lukas Tulovic.
Yeah, Zacconi out front at the moment then, so this is really throwing the cat amongst the pigeons. This wasn't the race we were expecting early on, although Tuli's already trying to make progress at the inside now of Tulovic. But yeah, we weren't expecting this kind of race. Tuli down to third, and just to confirm, Montoya was 11th. He's already picked off Xavi Cardalus, another rider who's gone backwards off the line to move into the top 10. Cardalus has dropped all the way down to 11th himself, having started on the second row of the grid in fourth, should I say, once Montoya took his penalty. But yeah, a number of riders much further down the grid than we were expecting. Aldo Guir is another one who's dropped back. He's gone down from 6th to 10th.
I think that's less surprising for the Superstock 600 man. He's, especially in a pack now, he's just starting to see the disadvantage of the Moto2 versus the Superstock 600 machine. Incidentally, those of your, I was going to say eagle-eyed viewers, but instead it's those that have got good hearing will be able to hear that these Moto2 machines don't have the grunt of the Triumph 765 that the World Championship guys now ride. This, of course, all running under the Honda CBR 600 engines that we're seeing in Moto2 from 2018. The move to the Triumph engines hopefully will be done in 2021, but in the meanwhile they're all on the 600 Honda machines.
And Tuli's hit the front. He got the double slipstream down the main straight there, did Tuli, to go past both Zacconi and Tulovic. So this is exactly what Nicky Tuli wanted, especially with Montoya down in the field, although he has already climbed his way up to 6th place as the Italian. So he's making great progress from that lowly position at the end of turn one at least. But yeah, Tuli hits the front. Zacconi and Tulovic will look to go with him. Medina is also on the back of this group, and the big gainer off the line, you can see he's just been passed by Montoya for 5th place, but Tega Harder, who started down in 10th, had gained 5 places. It's now 4, of course, with Montoya now at the front of that second group.
Well, we've got a leading group of 4 at the moment, Lewis. It looks as though it's going to be a matter of when, not if, that becomes a leading group of 5. I think we're going to have a 10-wheeler very, very shortly, because Jari Montoya is a man on a mission. If he wasn't pumped up enough after having been handed that 6th place grid penalty, being punted a little bit wide through the opening corner, just will have revved him up that little bit more, and now he's already looking like he's onto the back of that pack. Not just yet, still a few bike lengths separating him and Alejandro Medina in 4th place, but with 17 laps to go, it's going to happen. We're going to have Jari Montoya into this leading group very shortly.
He just had 4 tenths out of them in the 3rd sector alone, Montoya. He is absolutely flying at the moment as he closes in on that group. Cardalus is trying to go with him. We saw him take a big dive up the inside of Tega Harder into turn 8, but no way through for him. Cardalus wants to join Montoya and try and make it a 6-rider dice at the front.
Still Nicky Tuli that leads though, the number 66 to Finn ahead of the number 61 of Alessandro Zacconi in 2nd place. Lukas Tulovic took there into 3rd place with Medina on the back in 4th. No surprise, so that's the fastest lap of the race by Jari Montoya as he comes across the line, a 1:41.938. He was 0.6 of a second quicker than your race leader, Nicky Tuli.
That would have put him on the 2nd row of the grid, that Jari Montoya. That is very, very quick in race conditions for the Italian. As you mentioned, 6 tenths quicker than Tuli. He was way quicker than Tulovic, who was the slowest of the 5 in this leading group that we now have. But it's going to be interesting to see how quickly he can actually make it through this pack. Tuli's a job now will try and build up a gap as much as he can at the front, because it's one thing to catch this group, it's another thing for Montoya to overtake them.
It's a super fast lap, as we rightly say, from Jari Montoya, Lewis. However, we won't be able to judge it right now. This is a long race, 18 laps in the searing heat. How much damage have his tyres taken as a result of that? We'll only be able to find out as we get into the closing stages if suddenly he's looking like he's lacking any sort of grip from the rear of that speed-up machine. But that is something to keep an eye on. He's having to push much harder than I'm sure he would have hoped for in the early stages of that race, and it may well come back to bite him as we get into the latter stages.
Yeah, Medina's the rider first in front of him. He's going to be the first rider to try and pick off for Montoya at the moment, but he's still lapping very, very quickly. He's now right on the back of this group. The top two just having a little bit of a gap. Tulovic has just dropped a few tenths behind them, so we're seeing the first signs of this leading group starting to spread out a touch, and that will increase the urgency for Montoya to try and pick his way through there and get off after Tuli out in front. On that lap, in fact, it was, Montoya once again in the 141s, but he matched Tuli. He wasn't any quicker than him. So at the moment, Tuli's got this one as under control as you can when you've got a rider just 0.2 of a second behind you. But Tuli looking composed, looking calm at the moment. Montoya is now through past Medina into fourth.
We've seen this previously from Tuli though. He always seems pretty unflappable when he's got riders behind him. Of course, that first ever Moto E win that he took at the Saxon Ring to become the history maker, he had at least 3 or 4 riders queued up behind him, including the likes of Bradley Smith, Eric Granado, but he was never phased for outing. He was able, on the final lap in the end, just to pull clear and take the victory and become the history maker, the first ever man to win a Moto E World Cup race. He's now looking to pick up another European Talent Cup win, start his 2020 season in exactly the right kind of form, but he is very shortly going to have Jari Montoya for company, because he's already, the Italian, been able to get past Alejandro Medina with ease, and now he's going to get past Lukas Tulovic with ease as well. He came from a long way back there, but he made it look extremely easy.
Yeah, nice and smooth as well. As you mentioned, we don't want, Montoya won't want to ruin his tyres too early in the race. So with too many sideways moments and leery moments on the brakes, that's what will do the damage. So a very clean move, very smooth move for Montoya up into third place. One rider now between himself and the leader. That, of course, is Ciccone on the 61 in second place. And Montoya will be very, very pleased to know that he's made this progress early on, particularly after that disastrous first corner where he dropped all the way out of the top 10 without letting Tuli get far up the road. We did point it before the race. How quickly could Montoya make his way through with Tuli out front? Well, as we've seen, he's made his way up into third place within 4 laps, and Tuli is only 0.5 of a second ahead of him.
Well, the answer to that question, Lewis, is pretty easily. Yeah. He's not struggling at the moment, is the Italian whatsoever. Meanwhile, there's a fall here at turn 6. It's an incident.
Smith and Diaz, the former World Supersport race winner Carl Smith, 2-time winner in Qatar, and Joan Diaz, one of the riders to have moved up this year, or moved into the Superstock 600 race. He won the Superstock 600 first race here last year. Unfortunately, though, he won't be repeating that in 2020.
It looks like there's been a coming together between the pair of them. Hopefully both riders are okay. We just saw Joan Diaz, the man that was just receiving some medical attention in the gravel trap. That's a part of the circuit that these guys are coming up to right now, turn number 6. So are we still having waved yellow flags? It's not something I'm able to see at the moment, but fortunately none of the leading group put any moves on the guys in front of them, so no controversy there, thankfully. With now 13.5 laps remaining here in Estoril, and it looks like, despite a good start to the race for Tulovic and Medina, they're just struggling to hang on to the pace of our leading trio, because Tuli, Ciccone and Montoya are just starting to detach themselves from that duo behind.
Yeah, Cardalus is in there as well. He's at the back of this group in 6th place. He also matched the leaders on that last lap, or should I say he matched the leaders with the exception of Montoya, who did a 141.3. Everyone else was in the 42s in that leading group. It does appear, as you say, to be a 3-rider battle at the front, with Tulovic, Medina and Cardalus fighting for the remainder of the top 6 positions. Bisikierski is in 7th at the moment after that very impressive start. He's got Adam Noradin and Tega Harder for company. And Fermin Aldeguer remains the top Superstock 600 runner. He's 10th overall in the race, and he's some 5 seconds clear of Alex Toledo, who is the next rider in that category.
Well, if Aldeguer can hold on to a top 10 finish, it's a sensational result. Meanwhile, that looks as though it's another Moto2 bike. That's not a stock 600 machine that's gone down. Unable to see who it is at the moment. The number 88, is it? Yeah, Alessandro Zetti, the Italian, that's gone down. Not sure where that is. Is it possibly at turn 6? looks as though it's the uphill rise of turn 6, possibly. We're able to see here. No, it's not.
It's the last corner. It looks like he's lost it. Lost the rear as he comes through the last corner. And yeah, that's an unfortunate end to Alessandro Zetti's race. He had not had the greatest weekend so far. He qualified down in 18th position, and unfortunately, he's not been able to convert that into some points this afternoon.
Change for second place. Jari Montoya ahead of his compatriot Alessandro Zacconi, now into second. I did think when he got up to this leading duo, he might just back off ever so slightly and go into tyre conservation mode. But as you can see right there, that is not what he's done whatsoever. In fact, he's continued to lap quicker than anybody else out on track. He's just put in another fastest lap of the race. This time only a 1/10 of a second quicker than Nicky Tooley, however, with the Finn also upping his pace. But Montoya is a man on a mission at the moment. He's got past Zacconi, and now the only man left in his sights is the race leader, Nicky Tooley.
It's going to be interesting to see if Montoya's approach changes now. Now that he's made it up to second place, he's got 13 laps to go now, so he doesn't have to rush this. If he feels he's got the pace to go once he's past Tooley, assuming he does at some stage, then he might well attack early and then try and pull away. But if he has taken a little bit of life out of his tyres early on, this might be the moment for Montoya just to take stock, sit behind the Finn out front, because these two do appear to have the pace to break away from Zacconi.
He's just put in another fastest lap of the race once again, going a 10 further quicker, a 41.216. Incidentally, his fastest lap in qualifying yesterday was a 40.6, so he's just over half a second shy of what he was able to do in qualifying, just proving the pace that he's putting in at the moment. But as you rightly say, Lewis, that's going to be the interesting thing now. There's still a long way to go in this race. Does he feel he has the pace to pass Tooley and go, or is he just going to sit there and bide his time and wait for the perfect moment, the opportune moment to take the lead?
Tooley did respond on that last lap, incidentally. He did a 141.4 on that last lap, which was only a couple of tenths slower than Montoya behind him. You do wonder whether Tooley did get a pit ball telling him that Montoya was behind him, and perhaps he's responded and upped the pace a little bit. But they are now breaking clear of Zacconi in third place. Tulovic is a second and change behind Zacconi in third, so he looks like he's going to have to make do at the moment for fourth, unless he can come on strong later in the race, with Medina behind him. Xavi Cardeluz continues to hold on to sixth, although he's now starting to come under a little bit of pressure from Bisikierski. Cardeluz had a pretty poor lap that last time around. He was in the mid 143s.
Into the final sector here. We're into turn number 11. They'll then flick right into turn 13. Sorry, that was turn 12 previous. Now turn 13, the final corner, the long, the never-ending sweeping right-hander that leads them out onto the start-finish straight. And Tooley looks as though he got a good drive out of there. He's able to pull a bike length over Montoya. It's across the line now, 11 laps remaining. The rider to your right-hand side there, that's Alessandro Zetti, the Italian that crashed. So he is a back marker that hopefully will get out of the way. Yes, he does. Pulls out of harm's way and allows the leaders to race through. And incidentally, I did think that Zacconi was just going to tail off the back of these two guys at the front, but he's sticking in there at the moment. He's less than a second off the rear wheel of Jari Montoya, the compatriot ahead of him. So he's not doing a bad job so far as Zacconi. He's hanging in there, trying with dear life to stick with both Tooley and Montoya. And
he'll be keeping a close eye on this battle for any fireworks at the front between Montoya and Tooley, who, as we've mentioned, are the two riders who we expected to be competing for this victory here this afternoon. Zacconi wants to make sure that he's in position to pounce, and he's got a nice little gap over Tulovic in fourth position. 2.6 seconds Tulovic is off the lead, and 1.6 off Zacconi in third. So at the moment, Zacconi's just in that nice little position where he can keep an eye on the two in front of him, try and pace himself against this leading two, and try and be in position to pick up any crumbs should the two ahead of him get involved in a battle with each other and make a mistake somewhere.
And if European Moto2 action over previous years is anything to go by, I think there may well be some crumbs falling off of the plate in these next 10.5 laps. We can't discount, of course, Lucas Tulovic or Alejandro Medina there as well, both of them inside the top 5, unable to run the pace of the race leader at the moment. But as we get into the latter stages, they may well have just been playing a waiting game, waiting for the tyres to come to them before they then attack in the closing stages.
Yeah, we're looking at Alejandro Medina now in 5th position. He's another rider who's in a bit of a lonely spot at the moment. He's got 1.8 seconds over Xavi Cardeluz, who looks to have regrouped after that poor lap he had a few moments ago. He's back into the low 1:42s again on this last lap. So Cardeluz is just holding station in 6th. Bisikierski is still closing on him. He's having a good race, by the way. He's the only other rider, in fact, the only rider along with Montoya in the 141s that last time around. So Bisikierski, the pole, one of the riders who's really catching us up by surprise and having a very, very strong race. He could be on Cardelus's case very shortly.
Well, to answer our query that I had a couple of laps ago of what Jari Montoya, what sort of tactics he would start to put in place in the fight for this race lead, it looks as though as Nicky Tooley runs wide, does he? I thought there was an opportunity.
Does
on the
like
exit
that
of
line,
turn
Tooley.
6.
We've seen him a couple of times in this race take that very wide sweeping line for a late apex into that right-hander. So that might just be a conscious decision from Tooley to take that line as he gets a little bit sideways again into turn 6. He's wide again, Tooley, but again, I think he just prefers that line at the moment. But it is giving plenty of encouragement for Montoya behind him.
As we were saying, the tactics that Montoya is starting to implement, his lapse times have started to slow up, 0.7 of a second slower last time around than his fastest lap of the race. So it looks as though he's happy to just sit in behind Nicky Tooley for the moment and allow the laps to tick away, allow him to take a good look at the Finn. He's, well, you would have to say his closest title rival in 2020, if qualifying and our very small sample size is anything to go by. Try and get a good look at him, find out where he's fast, where he's slow, and where his best passing opportunity is going to be.
Yeah, we're just coming up to completing half distance now in this race as they come out of the final corner to start lap 10. And Tooley just out of range of a slipstream. We'll see if Montoya does close in as they approach turn 1. Not the same effect that you see in the European Talent Cup or in the Moto3 Junior World Championship races, as Montoya does have a look at the inside and he's having a go.
There he goes, up into the lead, a change of lead for the first time in this race as Jari Montoya hits the front. He's had to do it the hard way, starting from 7th on the grid instead of pole, punted wide at the opening corner of the race and fighting back from outside of the top 10, but he's made it look like light work. Finally hits the front. This is his moment to break, he believes, with 9 laps remaining.
Yeah, we're going to get a look at it now. Hard on the brakes into turn 1, and he just shows that front wheel, lets Tooley know he's there, and Tooley doesn't really have anything by way of response into turn 1 and concedes the lead. Now is going to be a very interesting time of the race. We're going to see now if Tooley has anything to respond with. Will Montoya now try and go? You tend to see with riders, when they attack so early into the race, it's because they feel they've got the pace to break away once they get there. So Tooley now will have to make sure that that does not happen and try and keep Montoya in check and try and be there to take advantage if Montoya's tyre does start to run out in the latter stages.
At the moment, so far, so good for the Finn. He's been able to stick with. There's no early indications that Montoya is just going to break clear and make this one look easy. Tooley's here for the fight. As we come into the chicane here, turns 9 and 10.
Cicconi's not out of this, by the way. He was quicker than the leading 2 on that last lap. We're only talking about hundredths of a second, but he was the quickest of the leading 3 last time around, and he's still just a second off the leader, Cicconi. So he's just keeping himself in touch. This might change, of course, if Montoya now ups the pace. But Cicconi and Tulovic are lapping in the 41s. They're showing promising pace as well. But no, this is going to be a key lap now to see how fast Montoya is. Now that he's got himself some clear track, at 1:41.4 that time around, he really did up the pace, and he's already stretched out a couple of tenths over Tooley, who now has to up his game.
Yeah, Tooley last time around was quicker than his previous lap, but not good enough. 0.3 of a second faster was Montoya at the front of the race, but those 0.3 of a seconds aren't evidential just yet. It looks as though Tooley, through this opening sector, has just got a little bit on Montoya, and in fact that is exactly the case. A tenth quicker, he's been able to stick himself right onto the rear tyre of that number 55. Incidentally, the only speed up in the class, as we have a look inside the speed up garage. I'm sure Montoya will be hoping that if he has a good 2020, he may well be able to pinch the ride of Jorge Navarro or Fabio De Gianantonio in 2021, with both of them, I'm sure, looking up to the MotoGP class. But enough of the rumour mill. Just plucked that one out of mid-air and decided to throw it out into the open. There's a moment for Nicky Tooley there. He's just about hang on, but that's not the sort of moments that he's going to be wanting as he tries for dear life to stick with the 55 at the front of the race. Yeah, it is. It's cost him time, that. It's cost him crucial momentum as they approached the downhill right-hander there. And we'll get a check through the next sector to see just how much time that cost him. It cost him 0.4 of a second to Montoya. He's now half a second in arrears. I think it is a case as well, Jack, that Montoya is simply upping his pace because Cicconi's getting no closer, really, to Tooley. It's just that Montoya was really stretching this out at the front of the field and taking full advantage of the clear track that he thought he was going to have from the start of the race, and in the end had from half distance after the penalty he suffered yesterday. Just a quick check on the stock 600 runners. Fermin Aldeguer continues to lead that. He's 10th outright in the race, and he's in a nice little gap. He's 2.6 seconds behind Adam Noureddin and nearly 5 seconds clear of Matteo Ratto, who's 11th overall. The second stock 600 runner is Alex Toledo.
Toledo. He's some 6.5 seconds behind Alda Guia. We've got Nicholas Schieber and Leon August, 3rd and 4th in class, with Andreas Koffler, the last of the Super Stock 600 runners. And he is a rider that we're going to see, I think, very, very shortly, because he's a couple of laps away from being caught by the leaders. So keep an eye out for that.
7 laps to go here in Estoril in the opening European Moto2 race of 2020, and it's Jari Montoya that leads the way. 0.4 of a second clear now of Nicky Tully in second, with Alessandro Zacconi still just about in touching distance in 3rd place, but it looks as though he's dropped back quite significantly on the previous lap. 0.6 of a second slower than our race leader, and he may well fall into the clutches of Lukas Tulovic, who can see a big old carrot dangling in front of him.
Yeah, he is. And Tully's responded on this lap, to be fair. He obviously had that moment on the last lap, which cost him a lot of time, but he's been chipping away at that lead on this lap. So Tully, he might look a little leery at sometimes, but he's still keeping some good forward momentum as he does it. And he might be a rider that ends up running out of tyres later in this race. It is a very, very hot day here in Portugal, very punishing on rider and machine and tyre. So with 7 laps to go, even though Montoya has that little advantage at the moment, this is still far, far from over.
Meanwhile, here's the battle for 6th place, with Xavi Cardaluz coming under all sorts of pressure from Pieter Biesakowski. Cardaluz, of course, with Team Stylo bike, as is Biesakowski as well. Both of them in the matte grey colours that look absolutely superb, if I can say. But it looks as though the former World Championship man is going to have to give way to the pull, because he's been chipping away lap after lap. And I won't be surprised if the 18-year-old is able to take 6th place away from the Andorran in a matter of moments.
Yeah, and you can see Medina in the foreground. They're closing on him too. They were 4/10 quicker that time around than Alejandro Medina. So we could have a 3-way fight very soon for 5th place. Medina's pace is in the mid-42s. Bisikowski was actually in the 41s again that time around. He's showing really promising pace in this race on his European Moto2 debut. A rider that, again, we didn't know an awful lot about this time, by the time this race started, but we're knowing an awful lot about him now, and everything we're seeing is promising.
Yeah, I actually did a couple of races in the European Championship last year. Didn't do a full season. A best finish of 8th place at Albacete. So by far and away, this is the best performance we've seen from him by a considerable margin. Back at the front though, and it's still Montoya that leads the way. However, last time around, fastest man on track was a man in 2nd place, Nicky Tully. He has responded to the Italian's pace and looks to be on course to set another fastest lap this time around, with now 5.5 laps remaining. Any thoughts that Montoya was going to jump to the front and pull clear have been thrown out of the window. Nicky Tully is well up for this one.
Yeah, and any thoughts that Zacconi had of getting involved in this leading group have well and truly evaporated now. He's over 3 seconds down on the leader, and actually starting to come under a little bit of pressure from Lukas Tulovic, who set his personal best lap last time around. He was in the 141s as well, some half-second quicker than the Italian ahead of him. So the fight for the final podium position might well be coming under question very, very shortly. But the fight for the win, there's still plenty to be said in this one, although Montoya still looks to have that little advantage over Tully as they go across the line. It's still half a second. Montoya was actually 2/10 quicker that time around, but Tully's just keeping him in touch and just keeping himself in position to take any advantage of any late problems for the Italian.
The big issue for Nicky Tully here at the moment is that gap has been hovering around half a second for a handful of laps now, and that is nowhere near close enough for him to try and make a move on Montoya. He needs to be at least a 10th behind Montoya before he can even think about trying to mount a fight for the lead on the final laps of the race. At the moment, 0.6 of a second is Montoya's advantage, which is definitely falls into the category of comfort buffer.
Yeah, it is. He's out of slipstream range, isn't he, of Nicky Tully, and it's gone up a little bit more in the first set, just now up to 0.6 of a second. We asked the question if Montoya, by overtaking so early, thought he could go and break away from Tully. He hasn't done that, but he certainly has this one under control at the moment out the front, although, to be fair, we did say this about Montoya a year ago as he led this race, albeit in very, very different conditions. So he's looking strong at the moment. He's backing up that pace that we saw right the way through free practice. He's been very, very strong indeed. And in fact, it's Tully who's the one rider who's crashed so far this weekend. So there's no question at the moment of Montoya buckling.
Here's the number 61 of Alessandro Zacconi. At the moment, Still managing to hold firm in the fight for third place, but you will have seen the number 3 of Lukas Tulovic in the background. Looks pretty ominous for the Italian at the moment. We've just got 5 laps remaining here in Estoril. Can he hold off the charging German behind him? Just 20 years of age, Lukas Tulovic now has some World Championship experience to his name as well. I'm sure he would have hoped to have had another year at the World Championship after making his debut at such a young age last year, but unfortunately the Kiefer Racing squad unable to hold on to a ride in the Moto2 World Championship. He's had to move down to the European Championship to hopefully fight for victories and the championship here and prove himself as a worthy part of that World Championship series. Meanwhile, a change for 6th place, that is. Alejandro Medina still holding 5th, but he's very shortly going to have a little bit of company with Piotr Biesakowski. Already got the better of his teammate Xavi Cardalus behind, and he's been able to gap him quite easily as well. It looks as though Biesakowski is the man that's moving forward, and Medina and Cardalus are the men that are possibly going to drop backwards at the moment with 4 laps to go. A super performance this from Biesakowski, just 18 years of age, and as you rightly said, Lewis, he's only been riding bikes for 5 years and already is challenging for a top 5 in the European Moto2 Championship.
Yeah, he squeezed an awful lot into a very short space of time as Biesakowski, because he did actually ride in the Endurance World Championship last year too.
Just ran a little bit wide there just as we're talking about him. We're singing his praises and he makes a mistake. So we'll stop right there before he goes any further. 6th place at the moment. Good ride. Let's see where he ends up. Back at the front though, Jari Montoya now 1.1 seconds clear. Whilst we've been focusing on this battle for 5th, 6th and 7th, it looks as though the Finn may well have made a mistake because Jari Montoya has made his break for victory here in Estoril. 0.4 of a second quicker than Nicky Tuuli last time around. Those two are already across the line, and Montoya now over a second clear with just 4 laps remaining. It looks as though it's going to be his race to lose with now 3 laps remaining. They hadn't crossed the line, but now they have. 3 laps to go here in Estoril. It's Montoya that leads quite comfortably now from Tuuli. And
he's holding that pace in the mid-141s as well. There's no sign of any drop-off for Montoya. He's keeping it very much under control at the moment with 3 laps to go. He might not look it necessarily, but he's very much in his mind and on track, under control. The lead, as you mentioned, 1.2 seconds. And that is a comfort zone now for Montoya. He's now got that buffer of being able to make a slight mistake and not come under pressure from Tuuli. Tuuli's getting towards the stage now, I think, where he might have to just accept 2nd place, which, as I say, wouldn't be a poor start to his season by any means. It's a long season. It might be a short season in terms of months and days, but in terms of races, there's still plenty of points still to be picked up. So Tuuli, I think, might well settle for the 20.
Here's Fermin Aldeguer, the man that's still leading the Superstock 600 race at the moment. Of course, this is a championship inside the championship alongside the European Moto2 guys are the Superstock 600 guys. Fermin Aldeguer aboard a Yamaha R6. In fact, every single one of the Stock 600 guys are aboard Yamaha R6s this weekend. The bike to be on. Meanwhile, we might well not have a fight for victory, but we definitely do have a fight for the final podium place on our hands. Tulovic has bit by bit chipped away at Zacconi, and he's finally managed to attach himself onto the rear wheel of the Italian.
Yeah, Lukas Tulovic, who was hoping, I think, of a ride in World Supersport around the end of last year. I think that's where he initially was looking to go. Of course, circumstances changed for that team, and that led him to this European Moto2 Championship. And he's making a solid start, isn't he, to his return to this class. As you mentioned, pole position and podiums in this class before. And he's looking to try and add to that at the moment. 2 podiums to his name in the European Moto2 Championship, and the number 3 is looking for podium number 3.
One of those podiums coming here at Estoril as well, so he likes the circuit. In fact, that pole position, the singular pole position he's had in the European Moto2 Championship, came here at Estoril as well, so no surprise to see him contesting for the podium. But he is running out of laps. If he's going to make a move, he's going to have to do it pretty soon, because we've only got 1.5 remaining here in Portugal, with Zacconi at the moment still leading that fight for the final podium place. Meanwhile, it looks as though Nicky Tuuli has put up a fight himself. Jari Montoya nearly a second slower than what he's shown in this race so far last time around, and Tuuli has cut that gap down to 0.8 of a second. Was it a mistake, or are those tyres starting to come under some difficulties we thought they might do, Lewis?
Yeah, and Thule's chipping away on this lap. It's now down to 0.7 of a second. Thule's running out of time for this. He's only got a lap and a half to go, so he really needs to be within striking distance at the start of the final lap, because turn 1 is one of the big overtaking spots where you can make a move. Of course, it's the place where Montoya took the lead from Thule. So time running out for Thule, but he is just chipping away at it. We'll come through the third sector now, and Montoya has actually responded. It's now back up to 0.9 of a second, so perhaps a momentary lapse for the Italian, but he's back on it now. And as we start the final lap very, very shortly, he looks like he's got just enough in hand to close out this first win of 2020.
This fight for third place is going to go right down to the wire, though. The gap at the moment really is in Zacconi's favour. He's half a second clear of Tulovic as these two come on to start the final lap. 1 lap to go, 4.2 kilometres remaining here in Estoril, and it's Montoya that leads across the line. 3/4 of a second clear of Nicky Thule. The Finn was again able to pull back 1/4 of a second in that final sector. It's going to be a monumental last lap from the Finn to take victory. Meanwhile, the German has pounced. Lukas Tulovic through on Alessandro Zacconi as we start this final lap.
Yeah, made it look easy, didn't he? Zacconi had nothing to respond with as they went into turn 1 there. Once again, Tulovic in the 141s. He's the rider with the late race pace at the moment. Zacconi may well have just lost his chance of that podium position at the moment. Winner here last year, and of course third outright last year in this class, but he looks like he's going to miss out on the podium at the moment, although Tulovic isn't quite out of range just yet, so we might just see a late last-ditch attempt from the Italian to try and regain third place. And if he's going to, this is going to be one of the places to do it. Tulovic looking to try and take a bit of a defensive line into turn 6, and he's just out of range.
He was sideways on his way in, was Alessandro Zacconi there. Super stylish, but I'm not sure it was the quickest way to get through turn number 6. But he's managed to stay with. He's going to dive up the inside here. Is it going to stick? No, it's not. For a second, I thought he was just going to let the brakes off and roll in front of Lukas Tulovic. He's certainly going to pounce if he can. This is going to be his best opportunity into the chicane. Can he squeeze through? Yes, he can. He forces Tulovic to pick himself up. Meanwhile, at the front, Jari Montoya, no such problems from 12 months ago. He's over a second clear of Nicky Thule now. Alessandro Zacconi still holding on for third place. Tulovic has only got 1 corner to go. We're into the final 1. He's going to be the drag to the flag to see who finishes in third place. But Jari Montoya has banished the demons of 12 months ago, crashed on the final lap in Estoril in 2019, but now takes victory in 2020. Meanwhile, it's going to be Tulovic that steals third place away from an absolutely fuming Alessandro Zacconi. You saw the Italian slap his handlebar, knowing that Tulovic had got the run to the line ahead of him. And Lukas Tulovic, on his return to the European Moto2 Championship, returns to the podium.
Yeah, and Biszczykowski got 5th in the end from Alejandro Medina. He took him late in the race as well to snatch 5th place. Medina staked Cardelus in 7th. Tega Harder takes 8th place by 4/100ths of a second from Adam Norradin, who made a late bid on the final lap. And Fermin Aldeguer, the top Superstock 600 runner, completes the overall top 10.
Super performance from Aldeguer to get inside the top 10 on a Superstock 600 machine does need a lot of credit, but as does the performance of this man, Jari Montoya. He had to do it the hard way, starting from 7th on the grid instead of pole position, and then punted wide at the opening corner. He had to force his way through from outside of the top 10, but he made it look easy bit by bit, siving his way through the pack before eventually getting behind Nicky Thule. He took his time, he followed him for a couple of laps, but then finally made his move with 8 remaining, and he didn't look back from there. Thule tried his best to respond, but unfortunately just couldn't match the pace of the 20-year-old Italian. But it's a good start to the season for Nicky Thule, and of course a super return for the Finn following that leg break in Masano just under 12 months ago. Unsurprisingly, the first man back into Parc Fermé is Alessandro Zacconi after missing out on a podium finish by 0.052 of a second. He was less than pleased as he came across the line after Tulovic was able to pip him to third place. Back onto a European Moto2 podium for the first time in 2 years is Lukas Tulovic. That will do his confidence all sorts of good after a 2019 that, well, it was a difficult one for him, making the move up to the World Championship at just 19 years of age. He did finish in the points on a couple of occasions, but it certainly wasn't the year that he would have hoped for. But this is exactly how he would have liked to have started the year. Zacconi just tried to hold him off. Look, before he even got to the line, he knew that Tulovic had got the run. And well, even though he's got his helmet on, I think we can tell exactly what sort of a face Alessandro Zacconi had. And I'm sure there was a few expletives in Italian that came out there as he slapped the handlebar as well. But talking of expletives, I'm sure there might be a few from Jari Montoya as well, but not out of anger, probably out of delight, because finally he is a race winner in the European Moto2 class. In the closing stages of 2019, whilst he was comfortably clear of Nicky Tula, he crashed out and threw away a debut win, but no such problems today. They've been put to the back of his mind, and he finally will get the chance to stand on the top step of a podium. Alongside this man, Nicky Tula, had a good year last year, balancing his Moto E exploits and the European Moto2 Championship as well. Picked up podiums in both. And this will give him a lot of confidence going into the opening round of the 2020 FIM NL Moto E World Cup in less than, just over a week's time. Meanwhile, the shaven-headed Lukas Tulovic normally has a lovely quiff on the top of his head, but like many under lockdown, it looks as though he's got the clippers out and shaved it all off and gone for the old bald look. Doesn't look too bad, actually. And it's certainly done him the world of good as well. Possibly those couple of pounds that he shaved off by getting rid of the quiff just helped him to take podium by 0.052 of a second. Who would have known? He'd have had a quiff under that helmet, a little bit of extra weight, he might not have been able to drag Zacconi to the line. So the baldy haircut working well for Lukas Tulovic. You might have also seen that Firmin Aldeguer makes his way into Parc Fermé as well to celebrate a Stocks 600 win. It's not the first time that he's tasted success in the FIM CEV Repsol Championship as well. He was able to jump onto the podium on 3 occasions last year in the European Talent Cup that helped him to 3rd place overall. He had 2 podiums before that in 2018 as well, so he was one of the front runners in the European Talent Cup, which is why it surprised many that he'd made the move to the Super Stock 600 class rather than finding a ride in the Junior World Championship. It certainly looked like he had the pedigree to be able to contend in that class. But it's not to be, and who knows, in the future this may well prove to be a stroke of genius from the Spaniard, jumping into the Stock 600 class, competing with the Moto2 boys, trying to gain some experience at the higher level. And I'm sure next year the idea will be that he jumps onto a Moto2 bike to try and compete with the likes of Jari Montoya. And speaking of Jari Montoya, we will be hearing from the 20-year-old Italian very shortly. Down in Parc Fermé, alongside Lewis Sotheby. Let's get the thoughts of our first race winner of 2020 in the European Moto2 Championship.
Jari Montoya, congratulations, the first win of 2020 after the grid penalty and a difficult first corner. You must be delighted with the recovery to win the first race.
Yeah, I'm very happy for this result because yesterday, for my mistake, I catch a penalty. And today in race 1, I started from P7. But for this, I just thinking step by step, and nothing. I'm very happy because this pass is the all work of this weekend.
And some words in Italian?
Sono molto contento perché ho mantenuto un ritmo costante fino all'ultimo giro e ieri purtroppo per un errore mio ho preso una penalità, mi hanno penalizzato di 6 posizioni, però pensavo solo di procedere giro dopo giro, sorpasso dopo sorpasso. E voglio ringraziare molto il team, tutta la gente che sta a casa, che non riesce a stare qua. E niente, adesso dopo abbiamo la seconda gara e vediamo che riusciamo a fare lì.
The opening Moto2 race of 2020 got underway with Nicki Tully on pole position despite being second quickest in qualifying. Jari Montoya, the man that went wide into the opening corner, received a 6th place grid penalty but then had to fight back through the pack after his mistake going into the opening corner. The fight for the lead was pretty fierce in the opening laps, with the likes of Alessandro Zacconi and Lukas Tulovic all having a taste of the lead before Nicki Tully took control and started to pull the pack away. There was no such problems for Jari Montoya though, despite having to make his way through from outside of the top 10, eventually picking his way past Lukas Tulovic to get into 3rd place. He then set his sights on Zacconi and Tully ahead, with the leading duo quickly being joined by the Italian. Zacconi was picked off with ease, meanwhile behind Alessandro Zetti, a fellow Italian crashed out of a point-scoring finish. And then, with 8 laps to go, Montoya moved through into the lead at the opening corner. He'd taken a couple of laps to watch the Finn, find out where he was fast, where he was slow, but once he took the lead, there was no looking back for the Italian. He would eventually break clear, a second clear of Nicki Tully as he came across the line on the final lap, with Lukas Tulovic recovering to move through into 3rd place as they started the last lap, but Zacconi was having none of it and decided to fight back. He took 3rd place away, but then Tulovic got the drag to the line. Meanwhile, at the front, Montoya was able to banish the demons of 12 months ago and take his first ever win in the European Moto2 class. And here's how they finished, with Montoya over a second clear of Nicki Tully, with Tulovic just 53 thousandths of a second clear of Zacconi in a tight fight for 3rd place. Piotr Piaseczkowski has by far his best ever ride in the European Moto2 Championship, with 5th ahead of Alejandro Medina and Xavi Cardaluz, with Tiger Harder and Adam Norridin inside the top 10 in 8th and 9th. Firmin Aldeguer is the top Superstock 600 finisher in 10th ahead of Matteo Ratto, Sam Wilford the Brit, Alex Toledo, Kevin Orgish and Takeshi Ishizuka, who takes the final point of race 1 here in Estoril. Just missing out on the points with Nicholas Chiba and Jake Archer. The likes of Leon Orgis and Alessandro Zetti a lap further back, and non-finishers Andreas Koffler, Kyle Smith and Joan Diaz. They'll get another go at it in a couple of hours' time when we go for race 2 of the 11-race championship, when unfortunately for the rest of the podium fighters, Jari Montoya will start from pole position rather than 7th on the grid, which, given by that performance, may well be quite ominous. Lewis Sotheby joins me back in the podium once more as the guys start to make their way out onto the podium. The first man, a super performance. Firmin Aldeguer takes the first Superstock 600 win of 2020, and inside the top 10 as well. Great ride from the Spaniard. It's a first podium finish for Lukas Tulovic in this European Moto2 series in over 2 years. Joined on the podium by Nicki Tully and your race winner, Jari Montoya. Banishes the demons of 12 months ago. I'm sure the thoughts of Estoril were lingering for him, but finally, he can stand on the top step of a podium.
And banishes the demons of yesterday, I guess, as well, from getting the penalty. He owned up, didn't he, in that interview, and said that it was his own mistake for copping that 6th place group penalty, which I suppose makes it easier to try and put it behind you in your mind when it's not something that's out of your control. And he's gone out there and he's righted the wrong, hasn't he? He's gone out there and taken the victory from 7th on the grid. And he didn't make life easy for himself. As we mentioned already, he dropped at least 4 places at the start of the race, but kept his head, picked the riders off in front of him, and ended up taking a well-deserved victory.
Yeah, great performance from the Italian as we see Firmin Aldeguer pick up his race winner's trophy, a part of Hector Faubel's team, the former 125cc, 250cc World Championship competitor, race winner as well, so some great tutorship coming for him. And the race win going away of Jari Montoya. The Italian stands proud on top of the European Moto2 podium for the first time in his career. And as a result, for the first time, he'll pick up a cheque from Repsol as well. €250 for the Italian to help him back to Salerno, Italy, or in fact, to help him to Portimao in a few moments' time. Now, the Italian national anthem.
take a photo. Thank you.
There we go, the Italian national anthem. Cut short, it wasn't able to get the full chorus of the glorious Italian national anthem. Maybe if he does the double and picks up a winning race too, they might treat him to the full version. But he'll have to do it all over again. He'll be hoping for no such mistakes at the opening corner when we go racing in Moto2 later on. It incidentally will be our final race of the day in a couple of hours' times. And as a result, he takes an early lead in the championship. 5 points clear of Nicky Tuli, with Lukas Tulovic just 9 further back in 3rd place. Just like the Hawkers European Talent Cup, 11 race championship this year, so every point really does matter for these guys. An early lead for Jari Montoya could be crucial by the time we get to the final round of the year in Valencia. In fact, makes great sense to run you through the calendar for 2020 whilst we have the chance. I'll do that in just a moment, because we need to get ready for the Junior World Championship race, the main event of the day here in Estoril. Jari Montoya takes victory in Moto2. He'll have to do it all over again in a couple of hours' time, but now our attention will switch to the Moto3 Junior World Championship. Who can take the opening honours of 2020 here in Estoril? Don't go anywhere.